We're going to start a new topic called pricing. And it's a very important topic, which is why it's useful now to have this as a recording. So we're just going to start with a bit of an intro, and the first key point of theory is the importance of price and the economic theory of price. So we're just going to get started into that. So we're just going to cover the first two elements in this section, and then you can move on to the next video. So from a marketing point of view, there are two general issues concerning price. As you know, well, it's a unit of revenue, so that determines what money comes in. The income is determined by how much we're charging for our units and how many units we sell at that price. We multiply one by the other, and that gives us our revenue. But more than that, the reason we talk about it in marketing and not just leave it to the accountants, so the part one there, point one, is to do with accountancy, and that's not our concern. It's an operational variable in strategy. So our 4 Ps, you remember, product, price. It's the second P of the 4 Ps. So that means it's a tool within our marketing mix for marketing managers to use in strategy development. What will customers think of our brand based on the price that they see it advertised at? If it's too high, or is that a promise that this is a premium product when actually it's just an average product? If it's too low, are they going to think it's crap? Are they going to think it's substandard, even though actually we are aiming for average? We want, just good value, a good value proposition for customers in the ordinary range of whatever it is. So price is a measure of the benefit of the purchase to the buyer, and looking at it from the other point of view, it's a measure of the cost of the product to the supplier with the top up of the desired profit. So pricing decisions are guided by one of two possible business objectives: profit maximization and growth in market share. So we're coming at it from two different points of view. Profit maximization is the overall, obviously, profit. So if we charge more per unit, will we sell more units or less units, and so on, back and forth, figuring out overall what are we aiming for. Sometimes we're just trying to blow the competition out by growing our market share at the expense of their market share. We're trying to hurt the competition in that case, perhaps. And we want to make a headline that we are now the top selling blah, 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 whatever it is. So elements of cost, if we want to talk about cost, as we have to understand just enough accounting to be able to figure these things out. So cost accounting is where is that specialization in accountancy, where they can minutely calculate the cost of producing that product or service for the customer. So everything that's involved in getting it from us to the customer, making it available to the customer. So a product cost is the cost of the finished product built up from its cost elements, and therefore the total cost of a product or service consists of the following. So any mix of the materials that go into it and used up in the making of or delivery of the service, perhaps, the cost of the wages, and then other expenses, anything that doesn't fall into the other two categories, but it's still necessary. Now, why do we need to know costs? So again, as marketers, we need to understand enough accounting to be able to have this basic kind of costing system, because the benefits are as follows. And this is a handy exam question. Anything with lists like this makes a neat exam question, so you should pay attention. So identification of profitable or unprofitable products, service or centres. So it could be, we can compare the Galway branch with the Dublin branch, or the Ireland branch with the France branch, or whatever. Number two, we can identify waste and inefficiency. So by comparing the two different centres, perhaps, we can also see their costs are double what our costs are, that sort of thing. What's going on in there? Number three, assistance in setting prices. Obviously, we always want to make more than it costs to provide that service or produce that product. So we need to know how much it costs us. So a costing system gives us that answer. So we need to know what's the absolute, in order to know what's the absolute minimum we can sell it for and still make some kind of profit, then we need a cost system. Number four, provision of accurate stock valuations. So this is important for insurance and so on. Because in our factory, if we're manufacturers, we could have, you can imagine a production line, and we buy lots of raw materials or components, and they go through various stages in the factory, and they come out the other end as a product. But those different stages have part-made products. And so we need a way of being able to track what have we got at all those stages, how much money is in all those stages, locked into that product, part finished products as well. So all of that kind of thing, not just what's in the warehouse of raw materials, and that is also important too. Number five, analysis in changes in cost volume, and therefore being able to track our profit. So we want to see trends. Is the sugar element, if we're making jellies or whatever, the sugar seems to be going up and up and up in prices. Is that something that we should be concerned with? Should we start looking for alternative suppliers, or alternative sweetener kind of things? Maybe it's the tax, that's the sugar tax that was recently introduced. Maybe that's causing issues. Maybe we need to have like a low sugar version. Number six, assistance in planning, control, and decision making. So all the decisions, anything to do with money, knowing at a detailed level what our costs are, helps us make all those decisions. And then the final one, number seven, evaluation of the effectiveness of our decisions. So we can look back and see how things are going or how things went and so on. And so the justification of the cost system. So do we make it complicated? Is it a very simple system? So it should be that the benefit of knowing this information outweighs the cost of the actual system itself. We don't want to hire a whole room full of accountants to track this if we're essentially, we've just got like one staff member making product in a garage somewhere. So it has to be appropriate to the level of business we're doing, and it had the cost of tracking it also has to be appropriate to what we're doing. So, we can implement a very basic and very simple system if we're a very small operation, like maybe we're three staff members who are all part owners, and something we can just spend an hour a week on, or something like that. Time is money. And we don't want to have to hire a separate accountant just for that if we're a small business. Okay, so moving on to, we're delving into the realm of economics, and this is Economic Theory of Price 1. And we look at another Economic Theory of Price 2 in the next video. So, market structures, it's all about what sort of a marketplace we are operating in. So for every industry, the answers to this would be different. So which of these? So there is a situation called perfect competition, and that is where there is a lot of a lot of companies offering this service or product in the market. There are customers. It's all very healthy. Demand, relatively speaking, meets supply and so on, and it hits that equilibrium market clearing price, and that means a company entering this market sees that there is already a lot of competition, so they have to set their prices based on what everybody else is charging, you know, slightly up or slightly down from that, because customers are very aware of what's already on the market, and they're not going to go crazy beyond either too low below it or too high above it, unless you are offering something that is inferior quality in order to offer a really cheap product, and you are kind of saying, look, we have reduced costs, we've put cheaper materials into this to offer people who are hard pressed for cash. Here's a cheap alternative. If you don't want all the bells and whistles, here's the stripped back version. But other than that, companies who are offering the average product within here, they have to look around, they have to see what the competition is charging. And that's what, you know, they are all following each other, and there's a kind of an equilibrium and a balance. Customers are willing to pay what's there, and suppliers have to be willing to take that price or get out of the market. And then a monopoly is the other end of the scale. There isn't a lot of competition, and typically one company that holds all the power and influence. So there aren't other options for customers for this type of product, and therefore that company can charge what they like. They have that power. And so sometimes that, as it says here, that situation can arise out of differentiation. So if you have moved far enough away from what everybody else is offering that your product is now in its own class, then you could be said to have a monopoly position in that situation. But at the same time, a company must be aware that you can't abuse that position, because all it takes is then the other companies to see the opportunity and start copying what you're doing. So great example of that is when Apple invented the first iPhone. So they revolutionized the mobile phone market and essentially created a whole new class of mobile phone. And at that point in time, they had a monopoly position. They did charge high prices, but they still continue to, because they see themselves as market leader and innovator and, you know, all that sort of thing. And people are willing to pay those premium prices to have slick, top of the range stuff. And so then in somewhere in between these two, there is a situation called oligopoly. A little bit hard to say as well, especially for me. So oligo means some, so there is some competition. The banking situation in Ireland is a great example of this. Prices tend to be very stable. The competitors in the market actually don't really compete much with each other. They tend to offer one bank mortgages are where banks typically make most of their money. So that's the rates that are easiest to compare, and they don't really digress from each other too much. One bank might have the best variable rate, a different bank will have the best 3-year fixed rate, and another bank might have the best 5-year fixed rate, for example. So they're essentially not directly going head to head, and purposely doing so. They're keeping the prices high. And on the continent, in most of other European countries, there's a lot more competition and prices tend to be lower than in Ireland for those kinds of financial products, car loans, mortgages, and so on. Okay, so a little bit more detail on the same. So it is a classical economic theory, classic economic theory, and the simplest is the perfect competition, as we said. So neither the producer nor the user has any market power, and both must accept a price that is set by market forces of supply and demand, and that's the equilibrium price. So everything is in a swirling motion, and everything adapts. It's like starlings, is it, the way they form murmurations and they all move together up or down, like a cloud. Then monopoly suppliers have the power because they are the ones able to exert extensive influence over the price. They can raise it, and you are stuck. If you want that kind of product, you either buy it from them or you don't get it. And that frequently, as we said, arises from product differentiation. So a significant leap in differentiation where advances or something have been made to stand out significantly from the crowd. And then the common market structure in between is oligopoly, where there are very few suppliers, very little competition, and so prices tend to be stable. Competition in such market conditions is likely to be restricted to non-price elements of the marketing mix. So the price element, so in the banking situation, the percentage rate is the price. That's the money end of things. But sometimes what they compete on is offering other things. They may offer help with solicitors' fees or faster decision making and things like that. They may offer like a 24-hour decision, which is very fast for a mortgage, that sort of thing. And it's really they're doing that instead of offering you a good deal in other ways. Now, economic theory. Sorry, I thought I had this in the next section. So that was previously economic theory of price 1, and let's round it off with economic theory of price 2. Another important one, handy exam question and so on. I'm not asking you to learn how to calculate it, but understand it. So it's all about price elasticity of demand. So something elastic. Oh, I have one right here. So when you pull an elastic, you see that? You pull an elastic, I'm going to hurt myself now. There's a snap back. So when you pull it, there's a reaction. Okay. I'll come back to that now. So that's what we're talking about, elastic, something reacting. And so there is an equation, and it's all about the percentage change in sales demand. So how will sales demand be affected if we change the sales price? Okay, so we want to know, and we can look at things. So the answer to this is, for our product range, do we know if our products have elastic demand, or do our products have inelastic demand? So let's look at Apple products. I would contend that Apple products have inelastic demand. If Apple raised the price of their iPhones, and we're not talking about huge, ridiculous raising or lowering, but let's say if they raise the price 10% more than they previously had, they would still have similar sales. People would probably stretch, and the people who love Apple will probably still buy the products. They may begrudge it later, and there might be later on effects, but they will still buy perhaps that iPhone if they're upgrading right now. And if the price is lowered by a similar amount, let's say that 10%, not a huge amount more people are going to buy it. They're still going to, maybe some people love Samsung, some people are going for the cheaper ones that are way cheaper than 10% cheaper. So 10% is still not bringing it into what they're willing to pay. So the demand is not going to jump up. So whatever reaction we're doing, if we're raising the price, we're not getting a snapback in demand. And if we lower the price, we're not getting that. So if we raise the price, we're not getting a drop in demand. And if we lower the price, we're also not getting a drop. So we're not getting a movement that corresponds. So this equation, how we know what's elastic is we put in the numbers. So after doing the experiments, and companies do play around, with the release of one product, they might try different prices and later on try other things. So this is something we can calculate after the fact, and then we know it. For our products, that's what it is. So Apple have done this calculation. So, they've experimented with changing the sales price. So let's say on one occasion they dropped the price and then they recorded what happened to the sales demand. So they put the percentage, let's say they dropped it by 10%. And then they tracked what was the corresponding change in sales demand, and they work out that equation. So stick it into Excel or somewhere and it does it for you. And then they can play around with different numbers, and Excel will keep changing and keep updating. So if the number, the answer to this equation, so we get an equals, can I type in equals here somewhere? So the answer, get rid of the highlighting. Okay. The answer to this equation, if the value is less than 1, that's what this symbol is, less than 1, we call it inelastic demand. Not much change. If it was elastic, so if there was a dramatic change in price relative to the change in, if there was a dramatic change in the demand for a smaller change in price, we call that elastic. So there's a big reaction, and the result of this equation would be greater than 1. So that symbol is greater than 1. So if we know our product has inelastic demand, then we know every time we raise the price with inelastic demand, our revenue increases. Because if we know we have inelastic demand within reason, and this is not abusing our customers, we should know we still are not trying to con, we're not trying to just get the maximum number we can out of our customers in this transaction. If we're doing proper marketing, we're thinking long term. So we also set the price thinking about keeping customers for years. But in general, Apple will know they have inelastic demand. Slight increases in price won't have much change in demand. Therefore, if we raise the price, people will still buy it, and therefore our revenue overall, we take in more money. If we're still selling, 100,000 units, whatever per whatever, then we're obviously taking in more money. But if it has elastic demand, so elastic demand is where you get a dramatic change in demand for small changes in price. So you get that big snapback. Then if we raise the price, we get a dramatic reduction in demand, and therefore we lose revenue. So we have to be careful to keep our prices at a sufficiently low level. So in any market, price elasticity is important. We should know within our company, it's not something that we need to be looking at all the time and constantly changing our prices, but you get a rough idea after a couple of, just from experience, and you have this, as I said, Excel does everything for you. You just have the equations there, stick in the numbers and see compare what you did this year with what you did last year and just make sure every now and again that that's still the case. So price elasticity, definition of price elasticity is that it measures the responsiveness of demand to changes in price. And it's calculated by that equation again, percentage change in sales demand. So what was the reaction for the percentage change in sales price? When elasticity, so if we changed the sales price, as I said, by 10%, but our let's say we dropped the price by 10%, but we saw a 20% increase in demand. That's going to give you 2/1. That gives you greater than 2. That means elastic. So when we drop price, our revenue will increase because we're getting more sales. And so even though we're making less profit per sale, the increase in numbers of sales outweighs what we have lost per unit. So when elasticity is greater than 1, so this percentage, whatever that number, is bigger. If the number on top is bigger than the number on the bottom, it's elastic. If the number on top is smaller, you're going to end up with a 0.0 blah, 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 or whatever, 0 point blah, blah, blah. That's the one, a fraction. So when elasticity is greater than 1, and we have elasticity, a change in price will lead to a change in total revenue. So it goes opposite ways, obviously. If the price is lowered for elasticity, total sales revenue will rise because we're getting a shooting. If we drop the price, demand shoots up and we'll make more money overall. But if we raise the price, demand shoots down, and we, even though we make more money per sale, the number of sales has dropped so much that we are losing money. Total revenue will fall. And then going back to inelastic, so Apple products. So let's say a 10% change, if they drop the price by 10%, it might only increase sales by 5%. So again, that's a half, it's a fraction, it's less than 1. So that means if price is lowered, total sales revenue will fall because we won't get the shoot up in demand that will offset the per unit lower profit. And then the other way, if we raise the price, again, we're not getting a reaction in demand, so total revenue will rise. We're making more per unit and we're still selling roughly the same number of units. So obviously we're getting more money. Okay, we'll leave it there. As I said, those two theories are important, and so that's why I'm keeping it short and snappy. Okay, see you in the next one.